Okay, welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, and I'm really excited to bring on Melanie Coleman for today's guest spot, which is very, very exciting. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jess.
It's going to be awesome. I feel like it's going to be a good day. Before we hopped on the podcast this morning, or before we hit the record button, we were exchanging animal stories. So for those of you who cannot see us, which is obviously everybody, Max is hopping on my lap doing a really good impression of a really irritating small furry thing, just getting in the way of the microphone, snorting all over the place and eating a prawn cracker. And Mel has brought her cat Poppy along to the table too, although I have to say Poppy is a lot more well behaved than Max is, so bonus points. So it's really good to have you here, and I think it's really interesting for me because you're somebody who has been part of my community for 8 months, 6 months, 8 months.
Yeah, I think it's
yeah, something like that. It's not been massively long, but you and I come from fairly similar backgrounds. We both worked in the corporate world. You were a corporate high flyer in a large public sector organization, and you then turned your skills there into your business out here. That's a really random way of saying it. It's very like, wow, Jess, how much more vague can you get? But you are somebody who's really helping women move out of corporate, set up their own businesses, and really use the skills that they learn from their corporate jobs in, the real world, in the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I spent many, many years during my corporate career sitting at my desk, sort of dreaming of being an entrepreneur. But that's all it was, because like many people, I had commitments. And so having a secure job, as it was at that time, was more important to me than following my dream. And for quite a long time in my corporate career, I was quite lucky because I was allowed to run with my creative ideas and had relatively free rein. And so I was quite happy with that. But there came a point where, there were problems in the workplace, and it got to a point where that security didn't really have the same draw anymore, and the balance shifted. And I started to feel really constrained and frustrated. And so that's when I took the leap, really, out of, a really secure environment into the unknown.
And it's really interesting, isn't it? Because I was saying this to one of my friends the other day who was kind of being very kind and saying, Jess, it's really great that you jumped out of corporate. Like, it's so admirable. I think he used a different word, but I'm going to go with admirable as the adjective, other than crazy and mental. But you happen to be okay at it, so all good. And one of the things that we were talking about was this idea of security. When we're in corporate jobs, it's really easy to go, yeah, the company's really secure. I'm going to get my paycheck at the end of the month. I'm going to turn up at this time, on this day, and I'm going to finish at this time, and I'm going to, do these tasks every week. But I think the world is changing. I think hugely we're seeing huge amounts of redundancies that are very unexpected. We're seeing some big companies, in tons and tons of debt. And actually it's making it really uncertain. And I remember my mum saying to me when I was growing up, the only person you can really rely on is yourself. And I think that that's become really prevalent in the job market today. I used to work in recruitment and we'd be like, yeah, no, safe job, safe as houses. And we'd see people who perhaps a year and a half later would be like, actually, this company is not what I wanted. The lifestyle is not what I wanted, or worse, actually the company is making me redundant along with a bunch of other people. And now I'm being thrown into this kind of period of uncertainty. And it makes me think, well, actually entrepreneurship now surely is the better option.
I completely agree with you, Jess. Even in the public sector, which is where I spent the bulk of my career, at the time that I made this jump, which was back in 2012, the public sector was no longer as secure as it had been. But the previous year, we'd gone through the first round of voluntary early severance, and I didn't go for that. At the time, I was sort of in a relatively good place and was quite happy to stay. By the following year, things had changed, and so I actually left on the second round of voluntary early redundancies. And I believe that, that's carried on since. So instead of making people redundant, they were looking for people who were wanting to make that jump. But so many things changed within the workplace for a lot of people, everything from pension deals changing to, contracts changing, that kind of thing. That it raised a lot more uncertainty and was, it's quite unsettling. And when I left, I initially went out and set up my own business through a franchise, which unfortunately didn't work. So I did sort of temporarily take a step back into corporate as a management consultant, and discovered just how unsecure most private sector jobs are, because I ended up having back problems, which caused me an awful lot of discomfort. And it got to the point where they let me go because they couldn't find projects that they could put me on. And I completely understood where they were coming from with that. But it did highlight for me that actually outside of the public sector, which isn't as secure as it used to be, there isn't really that much job security.
Yeah, 100%. And it also shows, I think, it highlights the fact that if you want to do something different, if you are somebody who has different life circumstances that require more flexibility, or, you're a single parent, or you're a parent and just trying to superhero it and, ferry kids around from one spot to another, if you are sick, anything like that, actually, in some ways, it is easier to be an entrepreneur. I know that if I wake up and I feel like crap, I'm like, do you know what? I'm going to stay in bed for a couple of hours and I'm just going to maybe bring my laptop here if I feel like I'm up to it. Otherwise, I'm going to have a cup of tea. I'm going to watch a couple of episodes of Fresh Meat, which is my current binge series. Bit of top comedy. But, we can have that flexibility as entrepreneurs. And I think a lot of people are seeing that. I worked in the corporate world and I worked for a great company who had blue branding at the time. And they always said, if you work for this company, you literally bleed blue. And it's true. If anyone ever needs a job, I'm like, you need to go to this company. You need to go and put your CV in there. They're just amazing. They're really great. And I have no doubt that when I'm 85 and somebody's, chopping me up post-mortem, I don't want to, I'm not assuming that somebody's just going to randomly do it, that I will no doubt have their branding through one of my arms or something. But I'm seeing an awful lot of people who were my friends who were telling me, oh God, you were crazy 3.5 years ago for just leaving. And they were all saying, no, take on more contract work, go and work for a different company, go and do these things. And now they're leaving and they're doing the same things themselves. And they're saying, actually, it's not about the security anymore. It's about the lifestyle. It's about the flexibility. It's about the freedom. It's about the fact that, if you're going to sit there and make money all day for a large corporate, why not do it for yourself? Why not make it happen on your own terms? And I think it's so interesting. And obviously that's who you are working with every day. It is these people that are saying, do you know what? I've got a ton of experience, a ton of skills that I learned somewhere else. And now I want to apply those and make it work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are lots of reasons why people decide to leave corporate and go and be their own person, become an entrepreneur. And quite often that change is driven by change in attitude, a change in priorities. And that can come from a number of different areas. So for some people, they've had a really bad experience in the workplace, which I had towards the end. Yeah. And that can be the driver. That can be the thing that, for me, it led to me being really ill. And that illness changed my priorities. It made me realize that I wanted more control of my life again. But other people, that sort of constraint and frustration builds and builds and builds, where they're not feeling like they're being valued or appreciated. They feel like that the work that they're being given isn't fulfilling them. They're feeling blocked by people within the business, male and female, who are stopping them from following through on their ideas. And that, that can get to a point where all of a sudden they think, do you know what, I can do this myself. I can do my own thing, and I won't have to put up with this anymore. And then you've got other people who, they go through life events that change their perspective on things. So they become a mum, and all of a sudden they want to balance their time more. They want to spend more time with their new baby or young children and work, although they still want that responsibility. And for many women, they still, the fact that they want to spend time with their families doesn't mean that they don't love the challenge of a job. But unfortunately, a lot of corporate businesses still aren't accommodating to that. So if you want to change the way you work, you want to change the hours that you work, they can't accommodate you. And so you end up in less responsible roles in order to achieve that balance. And that's just not satisfying for those people.
I think it's hugely, it's almost like a pandemic, I think, and I used to watch it, and because I was in recruitment, we used to sit at our desks, and I don't know whether anyone else does this, but we used to take polls on various things, right? We take polls on pretty much anything. Our office was a betting one. And I'd like to point out that there was nothing malicious about the betting per se, but we used to notice that there were cycles. And what would happen would be that at the beginning of the year, we'd bet casually on who would leave. And we'd be like, oh, I reckon so-and-so will leave this year. And it was just one of those things that you'd kind of be like, And what would happen is, January, you'd get a spate of leavers, because one person would hand in their notice. They go, new year, new start. And then you get another one and another one and another one, another one, another one. And in a recruitment firm, they actually are quite glad about this, because more recruitment is always a good thing. Your company is doing well at that point. And then it'd slow down for a couple of months. And then again, you'd have something like a major holiday like Easter, and you'd have, I'm leaving, and you'd have another one, another one, another one. And you'd work really hard to kind of fill those spots. And then you'd have, after the summer holidays, September, I'm leaving, another one, another one, another one. And then nobody would leave really before Christmas. Everyone was like, no, suck it in until January at that point. And I think that we see these cycles, and it's so interesting to me because people do the same with entrepreneurship. I know that when I was diagnosed with my illness in December, I was like, right, okay, well, I have to leave my job. There was no way I was going to leave my job in December, because I was like, well, it's security, right? I'm going to get my salary at the end of the month, and I'm going to be able to pay for Christmas presents, do all this stuff. It was in January that I said, okay, I need to, do something about this. And that's when I finally started taking my business seriously. And I think that's what we see a lot of. We see a lot of these entrepreneurs who will come into the market at specific times, and it stays in that cycle. It's January, Easter, September generally that people will go, oh, actually I'm not happy, and there has been some kind of major life event or major holiday or something that's made me rethink whether I'm happy, whether I feel fulfilled, what I'm doing every day. And that's when they start exploring this idea of entrepreneurship and setting up a business and working out where all the kind of cogs, if you like, go. And I think that's always going to be really, really interesting, because it does mean that 3 times a year, effectively, we have new people coming into the market, and everyone worries about traffic. And I'm like, don't worry about it. 3 times a year, people are unhappy in their jobs. They're leaving them. They're coming to be entrepreneurs. If you're a business coach or a money coach or mindset or whatever, you don't need to worry. There are going to be like thousands of people every January, every Easter, every summer who are questioning the choices that they're currently making and moving into setting up their own business and doing something new.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are two drivers for that, I think. One is that people experience the freedom and think,
Yes.
why am I slogging it out for, however, what was it, the 46 weeks of the year, so that I can, get a small amount of breaks in between, and I'm having to, for a lot of people, the reality is that they're having to work a lot more hours than they're contracted for. And in a lot of cases, having to have a long commute either side of that as well. I've done ridiculous commutes, 2 hours in each direction, on top of a full day. And so, when you take a break, all of a sudden you realise how crazy it is. And the second thing, like you said, is that it does give people the headspace to sort of start working out for themselves what they can be doing, how they can be doing it, and start making plans. I know I definitely used to sort of go on holiday and be spending it trying to work out what I could do and how I could live wherever I was on holiday at the time.
I think you can always tell the corporate people around the pool, because they're the people who are always reading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. And they're the people who are literally laying there like tanning, looking at 4-Hour Work Week with its 600 pages of inspiration, and they're like, I'm going to make this happen. Like, the end of the year, this is going to be me. Which does lead us really well into your question today, actually, because this kind of cyclical nature ties in really well to your business and where it's going. So tell us about that, because you've brought something that is really interesting to the table today, and I'm excited about digging in.
Okay, so I look around at a lot of the sort of big names out there who launch their signature programs in cycles, really. They sort of maybe launch it a few times a year, and I understand why they do that. It's a great way of driving people through the door, and they can concentrate their effort. But my business is all about helping women in particular who are stuck in corporate, come to this decision that they want to leave. They may be able to just make that leap and sort of start their business with no distractions, or they may have to build that business alongside their job for, a good portion of time. And I want to be able to help them whenever they're making that leap, to start putting all the pieces in place that's going to help make that transition phase as quick and as easy as possible. And I'm launching a new signature program. And what I'd like to do is to sort of create it eventually as an evergreen program, which people can find and sign up to whenever they're ready to do that. Plus, also, I have to admit, I do come from the lazy girls school of business. I'm very much about ease and flow, and so the easier it is, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm an introvert. I did a post on LinkedIn today about being an introvert in business, and so for me, not having to waste a lot of energy hustling really appeals to me.
Yeah.
But it's, how do you get that program out there on an evergreen basis and still create that desire for people to sign up to it?
Yeah. So it's really interesting, and I'm really glad that you've kind of prefaced it the way you have with the, let's call it the old school guru launch style. And honestly, when I started my business 3.5 years ago, I looked at these people and I went, wow, well, they launch one thing a year and they're making like millions. How hard can it be? How wrong was I? Subsequently realized that was never, ever going to be the way that I run my business. And I want to talk about that for a while, because it's become very popular. And it became very popular because there were 6 to 10 people in the market who were doing it consistently. It was very much the kind of product launched formula way of launching. And so people were seeing people like Marie Forleo, people like Jeff Walker, people like Todd Herman, launching once, potentially twice a year, having huge launches, and then retreating really and kind of going back into the bat cave for another year before they wheeled it out again. The difference is that in order to do that, you've got to know where your business is right now. And it's really interesting because I literally recorded an episode about this recently where I was talking about know where your business is and then know what you actually need to be doing in your business. And it totally applies to launching. When you're newer, it's virtually impossible to say that you're going to have one launch a year and that it's going to be $1 million launch. And it's not because it couldn't happen. It's not because if you can't make it happen, you're crap. It's simply because if you look at the way that these people are launching, they don't actually launch once a year. Okay, this is a big lie. It's a big myth. Okay, we'll call it a myth because it's Marie Forleo and I like Marie Forleo. So let's roll with myth. It's a little bit softer. But if you look at when these people launch, and we've had it recently, right? So Todd Herman has recently done his 90-day year launch. And I love Todd Herman. I am a proud non-finisher of the 90-day year, but I did purchase it. But I didn't finish it. So I'm a proud non-finisher, and therefore I am not an affiliate for it because I haven't completed it. But he recently launched 90-day year. And I love watching his launch, and it's great. And he does great videos, and it's great value, and it's great content. It's just amazing. And then his launch shuts down. So he launches it. It's great. Woohoo. Loads of people sign up. Fantastic. 3 or 4 weeks later, Selena Sue, who he is an affiliate for, and again, somebody that I massively respect in the industry, who also does large-scale open closed cart launches, is launching her latest program. Yeah. And she has this group of affiliates, which include people like Todd Herman and other individuals who also have these large open closed cart launches once a year. And for everyone that can't see me, I'm doing little quotation marks there. I'm like once a year, because what typically happens is that these people naturally are close. They're biz besties. They're very good friends. They're actually successful participants in each other's programs. And they've got to a point where they can actually make considerable affiliate revenue from their audience size by passing them along to each other, you know. And I love watching their launches. I have been tempted very, very many times to buy a lot of stuff, hence not finishing 90-day year. But sorry, Todd, if you're ever listening to this, I'm very sorry. I will complete it eventually. So it's not that they launch once a year. It's that they are consistently involved with other revenue generation strategies. And that $1 million or whatever it is that they're earning on their program initially is not what's substituting the whole year. And you also have to look at how much of that is expenses, ad spend, affiliate payouts, technology, VAs. Like there is a whole shebang of cash that goes into setting that up. And that's why they're involved in affiliate launches all year. And obviously because they want to promote these other programs because they're good. Like that's all cool. So I think that the model itself does not work until you get to a certain level. And that's what I would encourage people to see. It's not sustainable for you if you are not supplementing your income in any other way. You know, so to be at that level, you either have to network heavily, get to know a lot of people, or you have to be a really good affiliate. Take programs and actually work at affiliating them. For you, because like you say, your people are leaving corporate all the time, it's not really something that you want to be doing and going, I'm just going to launch it once a year. And, you know, maybe I'll pick January because technically it's probably the most popular time. But the rest of it, good luck. So I think for you, it's more about looking at your program and going, how do I want to deliver the program? Do you want to deliver it live, or do you want to deliver it purely automated?
So my particular program, there are a number of modules, which are self-study modules, but then that's supported with a Facebook community, in which they can get access to live Q&As and live coaching calls. And this is ongoing. So this is not just, you know, you're going to have a program for 6 weeks and then that's it. That's all you get from me. It's going to be you know, the calls will go on and on for as long as you are in that stage of business and you need support at that level, at which point they're probably going to sort of go off and, you know, find someone who can support them to grow to the next level, or gravitate to one-to-one coaching where they get all of your time. So that's how I would be delivering my program.
Okay. So in that sense, then what you can do is you can set up an evergreen model that feels real time. So if you'd have said, look, Jess, I want to have a call every week for 12 weeks where I answer questions about it and only 12 weeks, I'd have said, launch the program every 12 weeks. Because people can wait. You know, if somebody leaves their job in February, it's not really your fault. They're going to have to hang around till March to join the program, and actually gives them a chance to feel you out and to know you, like you, trust you, all that good stuff. But if it's something that's ongoing, and I will predict publicly that within a year of running this, you will say, do you know what, Jess? I'm going to go back to that 12-week thing that you were talking about, because that sounds great. The reason being is that when you have ongoing calls forever, for the first couple of rounds, it's great because people don't take the mick. You know, people turn up and, like you say, they will drop off. They will naturally progress through material. However, sometimes you're going to find that people just, they want more knowledge. You know, they do. And they can't help that, you know, and I'm the same. If somebody's going to sit there every week and give me answers to stuff, I'm going to show up every week and I'm going to get the answers. But you'll find that you're starting to talk about stuff that wasn't really in the program to start with. So then what you're doing is fielding a ton of questions from people who are more advanced than the people who are now buying as new purchasers.
Yeah.
And that actually the content doesn't match up. So just keep an eye on that. So like I say, for the first year, you'd probably be absolutely fine. I'd say you could get 2 or 3 rounds of, you know, where people do drop off, or it is nice and easy. And then afterwards, I would reevaluate and I'd go, how long really do people need to progress through this material? I'm going to run the live calls for that. And then I'm going to shut it down for a couple of weeks, give myself a break for holidays and stuff, because obviously committing to weekly calls or anything can be havoc with the schedule. And then obviously you can move forward from there. So with an evergreen model, what I'd probably suggest, depending on how you like to run sales in your business, is having something that your new people are always going through. So for example, webinars work really well. They're my preferred sales style because they're easy to put together. Video is easy for me and it just makes sense. And anyone who says, Jess, how do I do this? I can go, here's a webinar. Off you go watch it. And, you know, they can buy into a program or buy into a product or service at the end if one's offered. And it's relatively simple. When you're running something on Evergreen, the key thing is that your automation has to be really good and it has to be solid. So it's got to be, you know, your email sequences have got to give them urgency and make them feel like, actually, if I don't buy in at this time, there are consequences, you know, because I am going to sit here for another 3 months and probably do nothing.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very much about having strong, consistent messaging, being really clear about the consequences of people's actions if they don't sign up, and being able to move traffic through the same lead magnet consistently. Now, it can be done really easily. I say really easily, but if you look at Russ Ruffino, for example, he's built a really hugely successful business, Clients on Demand. I saw a Facebook ad for it a couple of weeks ago where they're making like 9 million a year with 1 webinar or 2 webinars, I think they have now. And they're just moving people into the program, and it's a high ticket, like it's a 10 grand investment through 1 webinar, and they just move them through. And so his business is very heavily focused on new traffic, moving into the webinar, on the webinar, getting them onto a sales call, on the sales call, selling them this 10K program. You can do that. That is an evergreen model. It is successful. It does work. Equally, it's something that does require a lot of paid traffic because generally people don't have that much traffic to start with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think a lot of people would be coming into it new in a way, because I'm trying to catch them at the very early stages when they're just thinking about having a business, rather than, they've already made that decision. And, it may be that some of them have already made that decision and they're starting down that route. And I know that there are quite a few people out there who are in Facebook groups, for example, who haven't got a business yet, but that's something that they're aspiring to. So, you can catch some people that way, but then there are going to be other people who it's almost like you're triggering that thought process.
Yeah.
And that is going to require, an element of pulling them in through paid traffic.
100%. And I think, one of the things that I always say to people is I'd rather you started organically first, because then you're not incurring tons of upfront costs that it's going to take a little while. Because when you run any funnel, you have to test it and tweak it. Nothing works perfectly first time. Even if you get clients first time, which is awesome, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily performing at peak performance. So what I would be tempted to do is go, okay, let's test it on new traffic, but spend some time promoting in Facebook groups. Go into groups where you can promote, give value, show up, do the normal stuff. And then when you are promoting, send everybody through the same funnel, send them through a webinar that they sign up. Maybe you even do the webinars live. Maybe you do like a series of 4 that are exactly the same. You run them live, and the one that performs the best, that's the one that you use the recording of. Make it easy for yourself. And that way you can see how it performs with organic traffic, makes it a lot easier on the cost, like the upfront cost piece. And then once you know that it's working, and actually I've done 4 webinars, every single time I've had, let's say 10 to 20 people sign up, every single time 2 to 4 have actually bought, I know then that if I spent money on Facebook ads to get 40 to 60 people, I'd get, 4 to 8 people buy instead of 2 to 4. Does that make sense? You're literally just scaling it up slowly.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be the way that I'd do it.
Yeah, I have done one webinar which I'm now tweaking to tweaking the messaging on slightly, and so that is the route that I'm planning to go down, is to start running live webinars.
Perfect.
But that's a good idea, to sort of keep tweaking it and testing it until you get it right. Yeah,
I think you absolutely have to. And I think the other thing is that sometimes, and I hear this a lot, one of my one-to-one clients the other day said, Jess, your business model is so easy. And I was like, oh, yeah, please tell me more about that. And she said, it from the outside it looks really easy because you've got automated funnels and they just do the thing and people can buy stuff all the time and there's no big launches and things like that. And what I always say to people is 3.5 years of work have gone into those things. Evergreen does not necessarily mean that you're not going to have the same burnout you'd get doing a launch every 3 months. And there are times, and I was saying this to one of my biz besties yesterday, where I'd prefer launches because I can pretty much guarantee, okay, I'm going to spend 2 to 4 weeks working, nurturing, building community, launching, and I know that I can control the input immediately. If something's not going right, even on a first launch, I can pull back, I can do things, I can react in real time.
Yeah.
When something's evergreen, I've got to control a consistent flow of traffic as well as all of the other variables, but I can't react in real time. If I have an evergreen webinar and I get 75 people on and nobody buys from the live webinar and nobody buys from the email, I know something's wrong, but I can't fix it until after the event. And that's quite hard. When you're looking at that evergreen model, you've got to be aware that sometimes you make mistakes and you have to let those mistakes run. And that's really challenging, especially when all you want to do is be bringing people into the program to genuinely help them.
Yeah.
So it can come down to, I'm like you, I'm very much work smarter, not harder, / lazy, don't want to be doing stuff all the time. But sometimes there is something to be said for going, actually, would I rather do a launch every 3 months and then spend 3 months just delivering and building the rest of my community and enjoying spending time with them and then launching again? Or do I really want to go down this evergreen route first? Because the reality is, and again, this sounds harsh, but it's not your issue when they decide they want to make the entrepreneurial jump. People will wait. You know, if I have a waiting list, it doesn't mean that somebody's not going to wait until July to work with me. It just means that when I offered it in January or whatever, they didn't jump in quick enough. And I can't be responsible for when they find me. What I can be responsible for is that I can keep them feeling nurtured, feeling like part of my community, feeling warm towards me until that wait list comes to a head and until they get to the top of the queue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing for me, and the reason I sort of gone down the route that I don't want to cut off when people, the amount of live contact people have with me, is that I know from my own experience what it kind up for a group program, and you've got lots of other things going on, and you don't always get round to it when it's running live, and so sometimes you get left behind, or you get to a point where you're just getting into it and all of a sudden the live calls stop. And I think that if you're trying to run a business alongside your day job, that issue gets becomes even more of an issue. And so I want people to get the most from it they can, and so therefore I want to run their access to live calls for longer, and then the live calls aren't every week, I think they're every other week, but I just want to give them a bit more than like a 3 month window in which they can access me.
And you can absolutely do that, but think about it, we're both women who've left jobs. When you left your job and when you decided you were going to make your business work, did your business coach or of whatever group program say to you, it's fine if you don't turn up this week, Melanie, I'll just give you a couple of extra calls. Like, you can just turn up whenever you like. Like, it's fine. We'll just keep you going for a year. Because mine didn't. And if they had, I don't know that I would have moved as quickly. I hear what you're saying, and I'm 100% behind you in terms of everyone needs to deliver to their clients. Client delivery is the most important thing, and customer experience is the most important thing in your business. What I want to challenge you on, and what I don't want you to do, is put yourself in a situation where you're saving them and you're saying, it's okay for you not to show up because I'm going to have this safety net for you. Because when we start providing safety nets for people and we go, yeah, it's fine, just do it this time, do it that time, no worries, what actually happens is we're not coaching them anymore. We're just letting them buy into this story of, I'll do it next week, I'll change next week. And that's not what you want. You want these people to step out of the situation that's making them miserable and into action. And yes, I'm going to set up my business, and yes, I'm going to make this happen, so that when they set that goal of, I'm going to leave my job on this date, they actually do that.
I completely agree. For me, it's about testing it out and finding out where that cutoff point is, because it's all about getting them from being in corporate to being able to hand in their notice and wave goodbye to corporate for the last time and feel confident that they can take their business into the future. And that's not going to happen in 3 months. No. So I want to use this to try and work out what is the optimum amount of time. One, because I'm all about, keeping it real.
Which is always nice in this industry, I find.
And I don't want people to be under the impression that they can do that in 3 months, because you go through so much when you're making that step, There's so much to overcome, both in terms of finding your feet in your, practical wise in your business, but also getting your head around it, and that can be the hardest bit. So really, I need to use this to work out what the optimum amount of time is that I allow people to stay in, whether that's 6 months or a year. That I would have to see, but the whole goal of the program is to help them make that leap. So I need to give them as long as it takes to do that.
Yeah, you absolutely do. I mean, my personal perspective would be that I wouldn't give people longer than 6 months worth of calls, because if we look at motivation is really high at the beginning, and this is one of the reasons actually I've stopped working one-to-one. So what generally happens, and everyone who's a one-to-one coach is about to go, oh yeah, month one, your client is like super motivated, emailing you all the time, they want the result, they're ready to go getter, action taker, they move really quickly. And so month one, you're like, oh my god, dream, right? If not a little bit like, crikey, they've sent me 30 emails in a day, like ha. And then month two, the client has probably got some results. And also they're now in that point where it's like, oh, consistency. Ugh, dull, boring. I want to show up and I want to do things. And I'm motivated because I want the result, but also I'm recognizing that it's quite hard now. And so motivation dips slightly, action dips a lot. And then they get to month three, which is typically how long most coaching packages, people do them in 3 months or 6 months, whatever. And month three, they go, oh God, my coach isn't going to be around at the end of this month. I have to work really hard again. And so suddenly we see this uptick in motivation again and uptick in action. Now, when you add a full-time job into the mix as well, everything is all over the place. First month, really motivated, want to get out of my job, hate it. I'm setting the goal. I'm going to be ready to leave on this date, hell or high water. Month two, I'm kind of tired of getting up at 5 a.m. to do client calls. And I'm a little bit sick of getting at home at like 7 p.m. and having to work on WordPress and figure out PayPal integrations and, do this crap. And I think that if you let that go on any longer than 6 months, for calls, they're always going to have lifetime access to the material. But if you let them have more than 6 months worth of calls, I think what you'll find is that people let themselves get into that slump that we find in month two, that would typically come back up in month three. I think you're going to find that they go, months 2 to 4, well, it's July, and I'm going to go on holiday, and I'm going to do this, and I've got this big project coming up. And so suddenly, actually 3 months of calls they didn't use.
Yeah.
Because there's no urgency, there's no reason, there's no deadline for them to have to. So I would probably go with a maximum of 6 months on the call front. And then I'd say to them, you're going to get lifetime access to the material. And they can have call recordings. You can keep call recordings in a portal. Yeah. So if they want to dip in and they want to listen to what other people are saying and, feel like they're motivated and live, if you like, do it. Put those in there. But I think, that you would be doing yourself a disservice and them if it went on any longer. Because ultimately, yes, everyone's going to take longer. Or, people are going to leave their jobs at different times, and some people it's going to take them a year, and some people it's going to take them 3 months. But you can't base, and this is unfortunately where the business head has to come in and go, actually, if I'm charging, let's say 2K for this program, and they're getting 6 months worth of calls, so that's 12 calls over 24 weeks. Realistically, that plus all of the, content that you're putting in eats into your profit margin.
Yeah.
Massively. And then you start to feel like, oh God, I'm doing all of this work and plugging away. And what you don't want to do is go in a year's time, actually, I'm really resentful of this program.
Yeah.
I would go maximum of 6 months, test it out, see what works. And then what I do is I probably go, if you're going to do calls concurrently, every 3 months, that's when I'd have your big push of new members. We're accepting new members, kind of like it's like a mini membership, mini mastermind. for 6 months, and they get lifetime access to everything else, which is huge. In terms of over delivery, you're like right at the top over here. I'll give you everything. If my first coach had been like you, I'd be living the dream. But it's one of those things where you've got to look at what becomes letting them into buying into their own story around their own time management and how difficult it's going to be, and also codependence.
Yeah.
And from a practical perspective, we've also got to look at, realistically, if within 3 months somebody has turned up to 1 call, it doesn't matter if you give them a year's worth of calls, because law of averages says they're going to turn up to 4, and that's not going to get them out of their job. And that's not your fault. You can't take that responsibility for their lack of action.
No.
Whereas if we incentivize them with a deadline and go, you have 6 months, and it's up to you if you show up to the first 3 months and you ace it, great. Or if you don't show up at all for the first 3 months and, show up for the last 3 months because that's when you think you need the help, or you show up to every single one, makes no difference. But it will help you identify who needs one-to-one support. If people are not showing up, if people aren't making the calls, if they're not submitting questions, that's when you can then reach out and be like, hey, did you need extra help?
Yeah, because I guess if you sort of thinking about it, if you give them lifetime access to calls, there's no incentive for them to then take the next step into one-to-one coaching, is there? No,
that's what I mean. That's when I was saying earlier, that they'll come and they'll bring more advanced questions, which will do 2 things. One, it will hack you off eventually, no matter how nice you are, because you'll be like, that's not what the course covers, and rightly so. And 2, it will make all of your new purchasers think, oh shit, I don't know what I'm doing here. And this is too far ahead for me. And that's actually not fair on them. One of the things that we do with cash creation, for example, is we let the alumni attend calls. So when you buy cash creation, you get lifetime access, and every few months we do a live round. And we make the alumni who want to ask questions on the call, we make them pay an extra fee. So we say, you've got lifetime access to the portal. You can use everything in there for as long as you want. You have lifetime access to the Facebook group as long as you want. But if you want to come on the live round and you want to participate in the calls, it's only fair that you pay a fee, because then you're committed to the process. And also it means you're not taking away from somebody who has just purchased and actually needs more help and reassurance. You're not taking away from their time.
And so with that, does that mean that you host the actual live calls off Facebook?
Yes. We host them all on Zoom. All on Zoom. And what we say to everyone is, if you're an alumni and you want to attend the calls, that's cool. But the calls are only about cash creation. So they're only about the content that is contained inside the portal. So if you bring any questions around, Jess, I'm going to set up, a 20-part Evergreen webinar system funnel, we won't answer them. And it's not because we don't want to. It's not because me and the team don't want to help these people. It's because it's not fair on the newbies who are sat there freaking out going, oh my God, this program was supposed to be about no technology and not having to worry about ads. And now suddenly we're talking about all the stuff that I'm terrified of. It wouldn't be fair.
No, that's definitely a good thing to think about, because then if they do get, say, to the 6-month point and they're not quite there, they're not quite ready to make that transition, and I guess depending on your business, depends on how long it takes to get to that point, then they can always buy into an additional round of coaching calls.
Exactly. And there is nothing wrong with that. Like, just be aware from your perspective. I used to feel like if my clients didn't get the results that I wanted them to within a certain specific time period, that I had failed them. And I'd be like, oh my God, well, if they haven't made 10K in however long, or if they haven't, left the job in this period of time, then it's my fault and my program didn't run long enough, or my program didn't cater enough to their needs. The thing that I've had to learn and almost become hard-hearted about to a certain degree is that I'm not in control of what somebody else chooses to do. I can only be there and coach them to the best of my ability. So if I'm showing up and I'm giving 100% on calls, but they didn't, then it isn't my fault that they didn't get the result they wanted. You know, if they're on the calls and they never ask a question or they never reach out for help, again, I can't beat myself up for the fact that they didn't make that 10K or they didn't leave their job in time because they didn't use what was there.
Going back to the Lazy Girl School of Business.
I love it.
When you launch, do it like, say you launching every 3 months or something.
Yeah.
Do you use live webinars every single time, or would you use a pre-recorded one, or would you maybe use a mix?
It's totally up to you. I mean, I've done both. I prefer to run live stuff. If I'm running a live launch, I like to do things live. The reason for that is because I feel like, and I'm an introvert, but I like to spend time with people sometimes. Launching is one of those times, right? I feed off of people's energy during a launch because I'm genuinely excited about what they're doing. Less so if they buy from me or not. I don't really care about that. But during launch periods, live launch periods, it's the opportunity for me to really get to know my community and really have fun with them and enjoy what we're doing, because often we'll run challenges or live webinars, and it's the opportunity for people to learn different things and get to know the rest of the community. And that really lights me up. So actually doing it live for me is really good fun. After I've done the launch though, I step back for a good week and I'm like, whoo, just need some time over here to breathe and chill. So, it is one of those things where sometimes if I've got a really good pre-recorded webinar, I'll say to people, look, I want you to go and watch this, but it is pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Right? It's one I recorded. And then afterwards, what I might do is go into my Facebook community, for example, and do a live Q&A and go, hey, look, don't want to bother doing the webinar live because let's face it, life's too short for me to redo all those slides and stuff. What I do want to do live is the bit that's me interacting with you, which is the Q&A. So if you want to be, if you want to do Lazy Girl School of Business, I'd totally go watch this pre-recorded webinar. And then afterwards, let's do something together to make it fun.
I guess you could, like, if you're launching for a signature program, for example, it makes sense to do it live because you're letting people see you, aren't you? And and that increases your ability to create that know, like, trust factor.
Yeah.
But I guess there's no reason that you couldn't record the webinar and then use it for something else.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, if you look at what I've done with all of my webinars, and some have had offers at the end, some of them don't, I've put them all into the Dotties. Yeah. So that, everyone in the membership can go, how do you structure a webinar? And there's a little checklist. And also, if anyone thinks randomly one day, oh, how do I generate, 1,800 leads? Oh, they can go and watch that webinar. Or how do I get a ton of PR that leads to X amount of people joining my Facebook group? I'll go and watch that webinar. So you can use them as other pieces of content. You can include them as bonuses to programs. You can even use it as part of your Evergreen strategy and start, as you're increasing your cash flow, go, actually, is it worth me running an ad to this webinar that I've recorded because it did really well? So, and slowly doing it and increasing that passive income piece.
The other thing that I was sort of pondering around, certainly when I was thinking about the Evergreen bit, was I know that people quite often use a lower price for a limited period of time in order to drive people to make that buying decision now. Yeah. And of course, that's going to be easier to do if you're doing live launches than if you're running it evergreen.
It is easier, but there are lots of pieces of software that will do it for you. So if you use something like Deadline Funnel, for example, basically what it will do is it will track IP addresses. So while somebody is within, let's say you have a 48-hour period where the price is lower, whilst they're in that 48-hour period and they're appearing from the same IP address, it will give them the lower price. And as soon as it disappears, it will flick over and go, nope, full price now. And again, with your email automation, you can do exactly the same thing. You would just write out the automated sequence, first 48 hours, this is the price, it's the lower price, And then the next set of emails would be, the price has gone up and these are your new reasons of urgency.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I was sort of wondering how you control it on the evergreen bit, how you can sort of, because you're going to have people coming constantly through the funnel. How do you control prices going up and down and things like that?
It's all software. Everything is software. So never ever like worry about that bit. There is always going to be a bit of technology that can do it for you. But yeah, I use Demio to record my webinars, and that will tell me like how long people stayed on the webinar, how many people watched the pitch. I can actually email people at different drop-off points. So if somebody dropped off after 5 minutes, I can be like, hey, I know you didn't bother even watching like the first section of the webinar, if I want to be like super stalker, which I am. So you can do that. If you want like price changes and stuff, you can use things like Deadline Funnel, which will again track the IP addresses, tell people the price is one price, and then after a dedicated amount of time we'll switch it over. You can use things like Stealth Webinar, ClickFunnels, all of these things, countdown timer and all that kind of stuff. All of them will use and track IP addresses, and they will change things automatically just by recognizing somebody. Basically they'll pick up their internet footprint and go, oh, you're going to get it at this price today and this price tomorrow, and you don't even have to worry about it.
And with like in the build up to the webinar, do you use tripwires?
I don't really. If I'm launching something from a live webinar, I tend not to use a tripwire because I want people to be focused on what the webinar is. And I found over the years that if people go ahead and download a tripwire, either they don't use it and then they go, oh, well, it wasn't exciting enough, so I'm not going to bother showing to the webinar. Or they're using the tripwire and then they forget about the webinar because they're like, oh, I've already done that now. There are some things it works well on. If you've got like something small that's like a checklist or, an action pack that they can, if you're going to use like a workbook that went with the webinar, for example, or a workbook post-webinar that was designed to be like hey, this is your pre-work guide to get yourself in the right place to be on the webinar, and it's $5, fine. Other than that, I see no point in sending something to somebody where I'm like, I'm going to make the real effort to give you a ton of value on the webinar so that you buy whatever's at the end.
Yeah. So if you were wanting to use tripwires as a way of building in passive income, they're better off on other types of opt-in.
Yeah, so it's not about having a good type of opt-in. I'm talking about live launches. I wouldn't put a tripwire on a live launch because I want people to be focused on the end product.
Yeah.
What I always do is, I've got tripwires on other things that are evergreen. So like evergreen funnels, I've got like a Supersize Your Sales guide that goes into a sales scripts thing, and then that goes into a webinar, or has an option to, and then has other things coming off the back, depending on how people behave. But personally, passive income is not something you want to start with. And I say it to everyone. I'm like, it's really not. Tripwires are not where you make your money. The majority of my revenue does not come from $27 list building courses. I really wish it did because it would make my life a lot easier. But it's not, so ultimately, yes, sell them, but think about why you're selling them. A, is it going to add real value to your audience? Do you actually want them to do something with the passive income product? And is that why you're making them pay for it? And B, is it something that's self-liquidating your traffic? So are you paying out for a Facebook ad that you are then going to recoup the cost of the ad by using the tripwire? If it's not one of those things, in all honesty, don't bother. It just adds a level of complication to your business that you don't need.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about all of that?
It's just also complicated, isn't it? Launching and knowing how to put it all together and the best route to take for it. And my whole philosophy around business is that businesses, one person's business is going to look different to somebody else's. We've talked in the past about the fact that there's no such thing as a cookie cutter strategy when it comes to business. And it's all about working out what's right for you. But in order to work out what's right for you, you have to understand how, the different strategies and how things go together and why you would do things in a particular order.
100%.
And so, there's just, being in business is just a constant learning process, no matter what stage you're at.
It is. And I think, for me, this is why I'm saying to people, just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Like you're coming at this and you're going, I want to do all these great things for my audience, but you're forgetting about the most important part, which is you. Yeah. And you're like, all you're doing is thinking about everyone else and how can I make it easy for them? Well, in all honesty, fuck them to a certain degree, because now we're gonna have to put the explicit thing on the podcast. Sorry, Scott. But it isn't that, whilst I always want my customers to feel the best and to get the best experience, and you are one of my customers, right? So can you ever say that I have ever made you feel unwanted in a process?
No.
Yeah, exactly, right? It doesn't mean that I've never thought, actually, Jess, you're trying to make this really easy for everyone else and it's really hard for you and it needs to stop. And this is what you need to look at when you're looking at your business model, is go, okay, what is really going to get my customer from point A to point B? And also, what's going to make me feel good about launching that? And it might be that you go, I'm going to start with the live option. I'm going to launch it once and I'm going to run the course and see if I actually even like it. And if I do, fantastic, woohoo, that's awesome. Then I might launch it live again, or I might use the pre-recorded stuff and I might go down the Evergreen route. But until that point, don't worry about it. And until that point, certainly don't worry about what your audience is doing over there, because in all honesty, it doesn't matter. You are the expert. You're the person who is saying to them, building a business is not cookie cutter and it can be simple. But in order to make it simple, we can't then go and do like 200,000 things in the background and go, I'm just going to sit over here and make my life really hard so I can make yours really easy. It's kind of like when we're in a relationship, everyone always used to say to me, you can't bend over backwards for your partner because otherwise they expect you to do more and more and more. That's the position that lots of business owners get into. I'm going to make it so easy for my audience. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to automate it for them. I'm going to make it really easy for them to access, blah, 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 blah. And what they don't think is, actually, is that going to be fun for me? And if it's not, you won't continue with it anyway.
Yeah, it's about finding the right balance, isn't it?
Yes.
And I know I'm a bit of an overachiever when it comes to customer focus, because in a previous life I was head of customer experience. So that does tend to be my focus. Although my driver for leaving business was about sort of repositioning my priorities and making things easier on myself. So it's finding the balance. Finding that balance.
And this is it. Customer experience, don't get me wrong, is the most important thing. And your customers have to feel valued. They have to be happy. But you know what? They're a hell of a lot happier when you are.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that means just going, do you know what? I'd love to do that big automation sequence. But in all honesty, it's not going to make me any happier. Mm-hmm. And it's not where my business needs to be right now. So I'm going to park it. And then over time, you'll find that people did this to me for, a good year and a half before I wrote my book. People were like, Jess, why don't you write a book? And I'm like, yeah, no, thanks. I'm just gonna sit over here. I'm going to do my thing. And then eventually it got to the point where I was like, okay, now I can explore this. Now I've got time. Now I've got the energy. Now I've, done other things that give me some of the freedom that I need. Now I can. And so when I did, it was really well received because it was the right time. Don't worry so much about what your customers think about your process. Worry about the results that they're going to get and making whatever you're delivering the best it can be. Everything else, completely irrelevant. Does that help?
Yeah, it's, sometimes I'm my own worst enemy because I'm, I've got a very strategic brain and quite creative. And so I'm constantly having all these ideas popping into my head about things I want to do. I'm coming to this VIP day with you in a couple of weeks' time, which I'm really excited about. And I have a whole list of offers, and you're going to die.
I can't wait. We'll update the podcast, and Melanie will then have like 2 offers, and it will be totally streamlined and like everything. But I think the biggest thing for you is getting over, not a fear, I wouldn't say there's a fear there, but a concern that people aren't going to have a good experience if you don't give them the world on a plate.
Yeah.
That's the bit that's holding you back. It's not the strategy stuff. It's always going to look the same, pretty much the same way. One launch will always look the same as another, evergreen or not. For you, it's about learning to kind of go, some people will be really successful because they'll show up and do the work, and because I'm always going to show up and do the work. And some people will take the lazy girl's way of business to a whole new level, and they won't do the work because they're not ready, and that's fine. And they can just sit over there and they can do their own thing, and I'm not going to judge them, but equally I'm not going to focus on them because they're not the priority right now.
Yeah, I did discover over the last couple of days, how you tend to get patterns in your life.
Yeah.
Where, things happen and they happen over and over and over again until you learn the lesson that you're supposed to learn from them. And I discovered in the last couple of days that I do have this kind of part of my nature where I sort of feel responsible for other people and the decisions they make and the actions they take and the consequences as a result of those actions.
Yeah.
And I realised that actually I'm not responsible for any of that. And I really need to learn to mind my own business.
And that's the thing. If there is nothing like that, I think is the most important thing about this whole session, is that you are not responsible for other people's success.
Yeah.
You can only give what you can to help them get there.
Yeah.
And that's it, because there are people like you, there are people like me who work our asses off with content that we're given. We take the coaching sessions, we take the bollockings, we do the work and we make it work. And there are other people who feel like they really want the result, but perhaps they're not ready for it right now. And I don't judge those people. I don't care. Like, that's fine. That's up to them. But equally, I don't feel responsible for them, because I know that when I set up my business and when you set up yours, we made a choice and we made it happen. And it didn't matter how inconvenient it was or difficult or whatever. We navigated those things, not always perfectly, but we navigated them and we made it happen. And you have to be in the right place to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I said at the beginning that, there are 2 parts to starting a business.
Yeah.
One is the practical business side, and one is your mindset. And I think at the beginning we've all been there where, our mindset, on the one hand we're excited, but on the other hand it's so scary that you can become your own worst enemy.
100%.
And it can take you a while to get going. It took me a long while to there's going to be an explicit thing on here anyway, so sort my shit out.
I feel like we should cheer for this one.
It's taken me a long time to get to the point where I am, where my confidence is is way back up there again. But for a long time I hid and really desperately wanted to be successful, but didn't really sort of do what I needed to do or be as out there as I needed to be. And it's nothing to do with introvert and shyness. That's just it's in your head, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's the thing. And ultimately that's what people need you to do with them. It's to not let them buy into, I can't do it because otherwise, to go back to our analogy from earlier, they'll be the person sat on the sun lounger forever reading the 4-hour work week and reading Crush It and reading all these kinds of things. Very inspirational, very motivational. If you do nothing with them, nothing happens. You know, if I get in my car and I don't hit the accelerator, I don't go anywhere.
No, exactly.
And that's the thing. You've got to let people drive their own car and leave them to it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I'm with my one-to-one clients, they, you know, they'll tell you that I don't put up with much. I will call people out. You know, I'm really friendly, really approachable, but, you know, I will call you out if I think that you're buying into the BS and point you in the right direction.
And that's what they need. And that's what they'll get. You know, that's what your program will do.
Yeah.
You've just got to set some boundaries for you as well that keep you going, so that you're not at the end of it going, I'm really burnt out and I'm really hacked off. And instead you're like, yeah, that was great. Let's do it again.
This is the thing though, isn't it? It's much harder to shine a light on yourself than it is to see what's going on in somebody else's world. And I think that's why, you know, having programs that have some kind of, you know, not necessarily one-to-one, one-to-many is equally good, but having programs and packages where you have some kind of live interaction is always much better, because you get that, you know, you get the value from other people calling you out and helping you sort of be brave and take those steps, because it is hard to be brave. And if you've got people cheerleading you and sort of like prodding you every now and then it, you know, it's much easier.
Absolutely. 100%. So my question to you is, where can these people find you? You know, if somebody's listening to the podcast today and thinking, actually, crap, I meant to leave my job in 2015. And weirdly, I'm still there. I'm still sat on my computer. I'm listening to this thinking, I meant to leave and I haven't yet. Where can they find you? Where's the best place for them to get in touch?
Okay, so I tend to hang out most of the time in my Facebook group, which is called Business Goddesses. I think if you search for it, it's www.facebook.com/groups/the Business Goddesses.
Perfect.
So that's where I hang out most of the time. I've also got a Facebook page, Melanie Coleman, and I'm on Instagram. I'm Melanie Coleman, wow, 2017, I think.
Look at that. I'm impressed you know all this. When people ask me where I'm like, yeah, just go to the group, go to the podcast, maybe go to the website. And then everyone's like, what's the address? And I'm like, So there you go. If you are somebody who is looking to make the leap from corporate, you know, make sure that you go and check Melanie out either on Facebook, Instagram, or your Facebook business page. I'm like, I literally just listened to you say them. Facebook group, Facebook business page, or on Instagram, and you can go and catch her there. And if you have enjoyed this episode, if you have, you know, felt like the swearing was, you know, hilarious, and also you maybe hated it, don't worry, not every episode is like that. We apologize for any explicit references. Sorry, iTunes and Scott, who has to do the editing, but sometimes you just need to drop an F-bomb. All right. So if you have enjoyed the episode, please make sure you hit the download button, you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another one. And if you do want to email me, reach out and ask your own question on the podcast, please do. It's jessica@jessicalorimer.com, and we will see you in the next episode.